teacher with a BA in ELT. He has taught in various settings, including high schools in France and England, as well as the Universidad Autónoma de Aguascalientes. In 2019, he finished an online specialization in Spanish language teaching from UNA. Since 2019, he has been an English language teacher at CIDE. Eduardo.
Thank you for this presentation. ¿Está bien el cuadrito sin la cámara? Okay. Great. Okay, thank you and welcome. Welcome to another presentation, another session. This time we are going to discuss the issues around TOEFL, a very important and popular exam, popular in the world, worldwide, and also with students. It's a very useful tool, and it's a whole topic. So that's why I consider it important to talk about this topic today and present it to students and also to other colleagues. My objective today will be to give the overview, this big picture on the test. We're going to go through some examples. We're going to go through the structure of the exam, because there are several types of exams and there are many questions around this topic. So I hope this is helpful for everybody. And let's begin then. Okay, first of all, what is TOEFL? We always abbreviate this test with the word TOEFL. It refers to a standardized test or an evaluation to measure the English language ability of non-native speakers. So this is very important for Mexican students who want to pursue studies abroad. And this is a very useful certification to prove that we all have a standardized level. As you can see in the map, this is a test well known all over the world. Many institutions accept and recognize this score, this test, practically the 5 continents. So it's a great opportunity when students dominate and are certified with a high score, preferably, on this test. And as I said, it's a very useful exam because it's standardized. So no matter the country where you come from, if you take one of these exams, that means that for institutions it's easy and they are capable of grouping students according to their levels. So it's a very important tool. Okay, what do we have in the next presentation? As I said, I want to help participants succeed on the TOEFL by listing effective strategies. There are many, as I said, questions for understanding the test. So I hope that by listing strategies and giving some feedback, some advice, the students can improve their communication skills, manage time when doing this test, seeking feedback, and obviously, and more important, keeping a positive mindset. Everything is involved here, like psychological factors, and also the academic. All right. We will begin by analyzing the areas and the skills, because according to the type of exam, some of them evaluate some areas and some areas and skills. The two types, the most famous types are IELTS. IELTS is another test that we will talk about later. It's the IBT, which is internet-based, and the institutional one, also known as ITP. In both exams, they analyze several areas and several skills. For example, the IBT deals with the 4 skills. They mixed all these skills and sometimes they combine 2 skills in one exercise. And the ITP uses also grammar and vocabulary in the academic context. So grammar, vocabulary, and also listening and reading. So according to the type of test that you take, you're going to be tested in these skills 4 areas. So today we're going to discover which ones refer to the IBT and which ones are tested in the ITP. Here is an overview of the differences in both. On the left, we have the IBT. And as I said, they test students in the 4 skills. And the scoring system is also different. As you can see, we have from 0 to 120 points, 30 points per section. And the cost, as you can see, if we compare, it's very different. The IBT is more expensive. Today we're in 2024. The prices that I check are more or less like this, but they may vary according to the country and the time. On the right, we have the ITP. In here, they evaluate listening and reading, and also grammar, one of the areas that we mentioned in the previous slide. The score system goes from 210 until 677, okay? And the price is cheaper, $50. Sometimes, as the name says, ITP stands for Institutional Testing Program. So it's more for institutions. Sometimes universities use them inside their programs just for placement or to check progress. And that is why it is cheaper. Also because the machine is the one that scores. They evaluate and they check the scoring system. It's done by a machine. And the IBT, I believe, is more expensive because they also evaluate the receptive skills, listening and reading, and they evaluate the productive skills, speaking and writing. And here, for evaluating the expressive ones, I think this is the human factor that makes it different, because teachers should correct the writing, the texts, and also there are open questions in the IBT. So they require the human factor, and that is why it is more like it's more complex, I believe, and more difficult, and also more serious because it's more accepted in more universities than the ITP. As I said, the ITP is just for internal purposes. So, okay, as I mentioned, the main objective is to offer students, teachers, and institutions to support them in their needs, because they are used for placing students in their correct levels, and also to monitor progress, to compare students' performance from year over year, and also for finishing and to certify that the student has acquired a specific level. And sometimes the students, when they reach a specific level, that means that they can stop taking classes, at least inside the institution, because they have already shown proficiency level. And this is very useful, as I mentioned, because in the process, the students, when they are used to take the exams several times, they know the format, and they get used to the content, and it's like a process. It's like also another way, by taking lessons applied to this exam. It's another way for learning, because they are exposed to different contexts, to different textbooks, to different contents, and everything is done in the academic world. So it's an advantage. In this slide, we can see the levels. We have seen many times the levels A1, A2, or B1, and these exams match a specific level. As we can see on the right, in the right column, we have that certain points represent a level. And when students get a scoring over, for example, 100 points or near 100 points, we can say that students have a proficiency level close to a C1 or even a C2. And for lower levels, we can see that they reach a level B1 or B2 after 40 points, 42 points. There in the middle, we also have the column of the IELTS, which is another popular exam that competes with TOEFL. And it's also a worldwide exam accepted in many universities, and it's done by Cambridge. And they also have their scoring system, which is different. And in some universities, they can match the scoring system just to accept the students from different backgrounds. No matter if they have done the TOEFL IBT or the IELTS, they try to match the systems for grouping their levels. So it all comes from the Common European Framework, which was created in 2002. And they created all these levels to standardize and group students according to their levels. The general recommendations, before we move on into the format and see some tips, the general recommendations to take this exam, TOEFL, IBT or ITP, it works in both ways, is to know the format. Many students we know that they have a very strong level. We as teachers identify that they don't have big problems to express themselves. However, when they do the exam, when they take the exam, they feel frustrated because they don't know the format. And that can remove points from their score system, from the final score. And so knowing the format can be vital for improving their result. So at the second point, as it says, to familiarize with the content, that's also a very helpful recommendation, because as I mentioned before, the academic context will be very important. The academic topics are there. So the content will also be important, so that students, the more they are exposed to this type of content, the better they will do in this exam. Time is an important factor too, because as I said, sometimes the students are strong, they have very strong skills, and at the moment of doing the exam, they think they have more time, and then they feel under stress and they don't answer correctly. So managing time is also a useful strategy, as in any other exam, right? Feedback, getting feedback from teachers, from books, will be also vital for improving, because they can compare the previous score with the new score and see how they can do better. So feedback will always be important and acceptable. As I mentioned, also with vocabulary in this case will be, that's my opinion, but I can say that it's so sophisticated sometimes. When I see some text from readings or passages from these exams, it reminds me of this character, I don't know if you know it, but it's Sheldon Cooper from the Big Bang Theory. It's like he is explaining like a scientist talking and explaining terms, and vocabulary plays an important role here. So the more students are exposed to scientific texts, documentaries, or specific words to a domain in academic setting, they will do better. Taking mock exams will also be important, because, as I said in the first point, they know the format. They are tested to manage the time, and also comparing the score, the final scores, also gives them like an important feedback. And sometimes they will be like up and down. It doesn't mean that once they get a score, they will be improving all the time. Sometimes it changes because the content of the exams is different. Sometimes the readings are more complex in some versions, so that's also to take into account. And practice, yeah. Using authentic material will always be important, as I mentioned, with reading journals, being exposed to documentaries, to learn vocabulary and improve, and as I said, to open their channels in listening especially, and practice will be also important to gain time and be able to manage time, because the more we are exposed to the text, a specific text or audio, it will be easier for students every time. And the day of the test, get everything ready. And by this, I mean physically and mentally. As any other test, this is very important to be ready and basically eating, yeah, not just before, but to plan the day in that regard. And also, I don't know, any physiological need, the cell phone will play an important role. I have had students who, the day of the exam, receive a phone call. There was this girl she was from Colombia, and she said that she received a phone call from her mother, but she didn't answer the phone. So she took the exam, and while she was doing the exam, she was thinking of why her mother called her. Yeah. So at the end, it was like a normal call, but she wasn't really focused. So think about it and really see it as a focus time when you do the exam. And also keep a positive attitude. Sometimes frustration is there, and students face difficult text, and in the middle of the test, they feel like they are going to fail. So having a positive mindset is also fundamental, and with practice, we can simulate a stressful situation. So I think all these recommendations can help for this test or any other test in English, or recommendations for test. Okay. Let's begin with the TOEFL ITP. As I said, you check the two skills, which are listening and reading. And one area, structure and written expression, also seen as grammar. Okay? These are the areas and the components that you will be tested with. And yeah. Okay. Every section has a way to be answered. This reminds me of American football players when they are in the planning moments before the play, and everyone knows what to do at a specific part of the field, right? And they plan the moves and so on. So what you can do here is that in every section, the strategies will be different. And so what you have to do in listening will be different. In the first section will be different in the other section, okay? And then for reading, so we have to be playing with the questions according to the skill that we are dealing with. Okay, this is the first part. Listening has 3 sections. Okay, this is the first one, which deals with short conversations. The questions may vary, but the general strategy here, as they are very short, okay, once you get the test, and once you can read the information, you have to read the options, okay, before listening. Why is that? Because by that, we can get context, okay? When we, as I said, they are very short, and sometimes they last 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and if we don't pay attention, we are lost, okay? So when we read the options, okay, we can activate some channels, we can open our ears, and get ready to anticipate what's coming, okay? Next, pay attention to sounds, similar words, and use synonyms. What does it mean? They are going to trick you with similar sounds. And this is something that students, when they do it for the first time, when they take this exam, sometimes if they're not so sure, they choose an answer because they heard some words related to that. Okay, if I heard the word window, and if I see it, okay, I think they talk about windows. I don't know why, but I go with windows. And sometimes in the answers, in the options, they are using synonyms. Okay, so they are playing, they are tricking you all the time. We will do an exercise about this. Idiomatic expressions. This is an interesting tool for learning English because the more idiomatic expressions that you know, because they are not literal, that would be the better. So what do I mean by idiomatic expressions? Later we will see one that deals with last, and sometimes the word last has several meanings. And we will see just in a minute. And what is the most important? The second speaker says the answer. As I said, short conversation, okay, one person says something, the other replies. The second bit is one of the most important. And sometimes the students get lost because they don't understand the first speaker. They think they are going to miss that answer, but if they knew that the second speaker is going to say the most important, that would be different, okay? Let's pay attention to this example. In the third one, I talk about, similar sounds. Pay attention to similar sounds because let's do this. If we say the following phrase three times, okay, silk, silk, silk. Can you repeat it? Say silk, 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 silk. Okay? And then you have to answer the following question so quickly. What do cows drink?
Milk, water.
Yes. So we can think of milk because it looks like silk. Okay? But when we think about it, they don't drink milk, they drink water. Okay? Maybe baby cows. They drink milk, but they drink water. This is the same what they do at TOEFL. They are using a word sound, okay, and then you see it. And when you see it, you say, okay, this is the one, right? But no, when you think about it, they use synonyms, and I will show you. Yeah, this is a short conversation. In general, you don't see this. We only see the options. So right here we can take advantage of those strategies. The woman says, your graduation ceremony is this afternoon. And the man says, I can't believe it. I've graduated at last. Okay. This is the feeling of CIDE students also when they've graduated after some years of study. And what does the man mean? So again, they are questioning about the man. So this is the important bit. The man. I can't believe it, I've graduated at last. If I only listen to this bit, I can understand what's the right answer. Okay? And then sounds. They are using in the woman's phrase graduation, and the man also says graduated. And they are using in the incorrect words the word graduated, graduated, and graduate. Similar sounds. But this is not the answer. The answer is a synonym of I've graduated at last. It's an idiomatic expression or fin, right? And the right answer is he has finally finished his studies. So they are changing the word graduate, 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 yeah, and they use another word. Okay? And when you have only 5 seconds to listen and 1 second, 2 seconds to answer, you go and say, as the example with the cow, you say water. Okay? And this is, there are like 30 questions in the ITP, 30 questions like this. So if you familiarize with these strategies, okay, many of the questions have this format. All right? Like that. So I repeat, just to summarize. The second speaker says the most important, okay? Pay attention to the word sounds, to the sounds, and pay attention to idiomatic expressions at last, okay, which is different to last also. Okay? So this is the first part. And then the second part of listening, of the listening section, we change the strategy. Because we said in this one, don't pay attention to these keywords, they are confusing. But in the longer conversations, this is in general like a professor talking to a student, okay, talking about the final exams. Right here, the keywords are important. So the first strategy is anticipate and read the options before listening. So again, we get the context. Before we listen, we have to get the context. And then pay attention to the keywords. Imagine the situation. And this is something positive to us, that they are restricted contexts. These are contexts that students know. Universities, professors, students, library, school friends, exams. All right. So by this, we get clues of the type of vocabulary we're getting. Pay attention to these 4 questions. This is the only information that we get. We may get 4 questions, and then the audio is about a professor talking to a student. And then when they finish, you have to answer these 4 questions. Okay? And I just have like some seconds. So that's why creating a mental picture will be very important. And by reading this, as I said at the beginning, by practicing, you get familiar with the type of questions. And every question, by reading the question, for example, today we're not going to listen to this, but by reading the questions, you have an idea of what they are talking about. Okay? For example, here we have a haircut. And we have a name, Bob. Bob, so they're going to talk about Bob and the haircut. And then this one talks about being just having the latest style, like the result of the haircut. And then broken mirror, hairstyle, scissors, piles of his hair, okay, an element there. And finally, you have quotations mark here. You should become, this is like a type of advice, maybe. This is some advice. So well, before listening, I already have like 40% of what is going to be mentioned, okay? This is in the second section, and the third section is very similar to this one. Here we have mini lecture. What is a lecture? A class or a mini class. They are really long audios. So if you're not familiar with listening to 5 minutes speaking, 5 minutes people speaking, students get lost, okay? They are really long, so get used to listen to long audios in one more time. Anticipate, read the options before listening in this, the same as before. Keywords are important, questions are related, and sometimes numbers are important here, okay? Let me show you an example. Again, 4 questions about a lecture. So this was like a professor discussing whatever topic, okay? And we have to answer to these 4 questions at the end. And the hardest part is that we cannot make notes, okay? We cannot take notes on this. So we have to develop an ability to retain information, to memorize, to imagine the whole situation, and just stick to the questions and say, okay, what are they going to ask? Because we don't know if they're going to ask why, what, where, but we have to be ready. That is why practice gives you an important advantage here. Okay, so it has like a logic. ITP, we have discussed listening, and now we continue with grammar. Please do grammar and reading. Let's dive into grammar. Grammar is a bit boring because students study not only English, but grammar and syntax. And sometimes when I have to explain some topics, they are like, what are we saying here? Yeah, but if you know grammar and syntax, then you can crack the code of grammar. This is very sad for students, so we have to learn at least like the basics. Grammar is so confusing. Yeah. Grammar is totally so confusing because there are questions like this. They are very tricky questions. And that you don't really think it's possible to have an answer, right? There are very specific rules of grammar. Sometimes they come out from reality, I think, from daily conversations. They are sometimes, as I said, Sheldon Cooper speaking, or rules of grammar. Very sophisticated, as I said. This grammar section this grammar part has 2 sections. And right here, now the strategy will be different. In listening, we said read the options, check the options. But in grammar, don't read the options. Okay, do not read the options in the first place. First, identify like the elements that we can work in class. Identify if there are 2 sentences, check punctuation. So we have to check the sentence, see the sentence, and ask ourselves what is missing, what is wrong with the sentence. But don't look at the options, because if you look at the options, everything seems correct. As I said, you feel like this. Yeah, everything seems correct. So what can we do? We have an example here. The hard palate between the mouth and the nasal passages. You see, vocabulary very specific to one area. Hard palate between the mouth and nasal passages. So it's about, biology or this anatomy. And we have to choose an answer. When I read this and see only the answers, I get lost. But what I try to do is I ignore this part and I try to say, hey, what's missing here? I would say something like a verb, like is, or something, but I identify that it's a verb, okay? And then I have to think which one is the best verb, because according to the tense. And the one that is a verb here is letter C, right? Forms a partition between the mouth and this and so on. First of all, I see what's missing. I think a verb, and when I look at this, okay. But sometimes we may have 2 verbs, but we have to see which tense is the best, the correct one, because they can be tricking you with past or another tense. Okay. This is the first section. You choose from 4 options to complete. In the other section, this one, again, it's a sentence like this. It's a complete sentence, but you have to identify a mistake. All right? So the strategy here is read the word before and the following word of the underlined expression. You have to see the elements that are surrounding the main the word that we think is a mistake. So we have to go back and forth and see what's the problem there. And again, grammar, nouns, verbs, adjectives, and punctuation will be important. Here, I just chose an example where you have to know vocabulary too. This is methane, which is a material in wetlands, in los pantanos, comes from soil bacteria that consumes organic plant matter. And I read this is like, what? What is this? So I give you a moment just to read and say if you identify the mistake. Sometimes we'll see, I don't see a mistake. I have worked with students using this sentence to show you that sometimes you have to pay attention to specific rules for TOEFL. Okay? Here the mistake is in letter C. Okay? It's with simple present and so on, but the problem is if you know this word, bacteria, then you know the answer. Why? Because here bacteria is plural. Okay? And if it's plural, here I don't need yes. Okay? So the singular for bacteria is bacterium. So this is like Latin or Greek or something. But these examples are really specific. When you don't find like the mistake, everything seems fine, you have to ask yourself, okay, what about these ancient and scientific words? Okay? And that's why TOEFL, this section is like so annoying, because we never are taught with these specific rules. They have very specific rules, and we can have examples like that. That is why when people dive into TOEFL, they have to learn more than English. Okay, you have gone through listening and then grammar, and then you have to read 1 hour. So people feel like they're gonna fail. They have to start thinking about bad scenarios. And I mentioned at the beginning, you have to have a positive mindset. Okay, breathe in, breathe out, and okay, motivate yourself the moment, because in the middle you feel like that, in the middle of the exam. Reading, in the ITP, there you have to deal with 5 or 7 texts. Some of them are short, some of them are quite long. But reading, it's not about reading, it's not about answering. Okay. The first drive that we do is I read the whole text, and then I check the questions, and then I go and read again. But here, we are going to stop reading at the beginning, and we're going to go through the questions. Again, we rely on the questions. So, the first tip, wait to read the text. Don't read the text. Read the questions first and answer the reference questions, because there are questions that are, I will say easy, they are not easy, but there are easy questions and difficult questions. So go and find the easy questions, okay? Because that mentally will help you to progress, to move on. Because if you start with a difficult question, time is passing, and from 10 questions, you only have 1, and maybe it's wrong. That's difficult. So try to change the strategy, focus on a more positive tone, and start with the easy questions. I say easy because they are not as difficult as the other ones. And then once that you identify the questions, you can answer some of the easy ones. You can read not the whole text, but the first and the last lines of the paragraph. You can identify like the whole structure of the text. The first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. The first line and the last line give you the idea. We have worked here at Sede with academic textbooks, this EAP textbooks, and they really work on thesis statement, topic sentences. They are very repetitive with that. When you understand that when writing, this skill of reading, it's easier because you understand the structure of the text. And unfortunately, the American literature format is the same always. They are very respectful of the rules. And when you read the first line and the last line, you get the idea of the whole paragraph. Okay? So you check the questions, you read the first and last line, and then you can answer the questions. And you can read if you want some detail, looking for detailed information, but this is it. And the difficult questions, you can leave them until the end. Which ones are the difficult ones? Except, not in the text, inferring, general idea. And sometimes they put them at the beginning. So students are into this trap where they start answering the first two questions and they are very difficult. They can start with the other ones. And also practice skimming and scanning. These are two strategies for reading that we can work in class. This is an example of a passage. Okay, so as I said, when you read it, and when students prepare for this, they immediately identify, okay, 3 paragraphs, then it's about the Niagara Falls, and they start to scan and skim, checking keywords very quickly. Okay, but they don't go into the whole reading like they go to the questions that can be like 8 or 10. And this is, for example, an easy question, number 2. The word flock in line 2. Why is it easy? Because maybe you know the word. Maybe. Or steamer. Okay, in 4. Maybe you know the word. And if you don't know it, you can go to the line, for example, flock, the word flock in line 2. So you go to line 2 and you find the word. And by context, you can answer. Okay? And in that way, you answer the first question, you are sometimes sure that it's the right one. And you have, in less than a minute or less than some seconds, you have the first answer. And sometimes you have the feeling that it's correct. And that gives you like this positive mindset. Steamer, okay? Steam es vapor. Entonces un vaporero, estamos hablando de turistas. I can go back to line 8. And okay, it's a boat, letter B. So I didn't spend too much time reading and I already have 2 answers. Sometimes the reference question refers to only 1 paragraph. They say, what's the first paragraph about? Okay, you focus only on 1 paragraph and you don't read the whole text. And later you can start skimming and scanning to look for the difficult questions, which can be number 1. What is the major point that the author is making in the passage? Okay, major point. It's an overview and general questions, so I need more elements to decide which one is the best. And sometimes when you do this back and forth with all the questions, you get more elements to decide on the major point or on the except or, okay? So it's like a process where you work with this text. And then you can read it all if you want, but at least you know exactly which elements are important in the text, okay? So once again, reading is not about reading, it's about answering questions, sometimes in a different order. All right, these were for ITP. The IBT, as I said, deals with speaking and writing, okay? And we have examples like this. You come up to an interview with a professor and he asks you the question like, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Teachers should assign daily homework to students, all right? And right there, a student has 10 seconds to prepare like a mini topic in his head and then they come up with an appropriate answer. That can be like 1 minute answer, sort of, okay? And right here, what the students need to do is to show the position, to explain the reasons, and using specific details in the argument. It's not only about yes, no, because I think it's a good option. Okay, so always ask like why. And the professor who is interviewing students, they start to make notes and start deciding on the score. It's like a higher score or not a high score. The general recommendations here. The same for writing, like give detailed and clear answers, structure your answers, show a position, give arguments, and also be creative. So we think that it's only English, but it's not only English. TOEFL is like a subject where students have to develop skills and face exams with these elements. Just to conclude, and before we move on to a couple of questions, these exams, these tests, it's more about English. It's about following instructions, knowing idiomatic expressions, learning skills like paraphrasing and scanning, knowing grammar, and above all, using strategies all the time. I have heard people, native speakers, who take these exams and their score is not perfect. Okay, because they can get distracted, they didn't pay attention, they don't know the format. So the score of a Mexican student can be higher than a native American student because of training. Okay, because of training and the academic level. As I said, it's not only for everybody, it's for people who desire to study at university in the first place. Okay. And these are the sources. Real time. Yeah, everyone. I don't know if you have like a question you would like to.
Not for the moment, teacher. Thank you.
Not right now. Okay. Well, just to conclude, it's an interesting exam. Okay, and students have to know about what they are facing because even for work, sometimes employers require these tests for work. And I think it's not appropriate because this is more for universities. Okay, for CIDE, for students at CIDE, it's a normal context, the comments that they see here and the types of text, but not for an employee or an employer. So this is more appropriate for academic context because, as I said, the origin is for students who want to study in the USA or in Canada or in Europe, and it's in a standardized way to prove that they will be able to keep up with the lectures, okay, at school, with their classmates, again, at university, or with a situation in the library, or for facing an exam, all right? So, yes.
¿De IBT or de TSL?
Años or ITP?
ITP.
Yeah, both. I mean, IBT is more expensive and more recognized. Let me show you this chart. Yeah, yeah. IBT is more complex because they test more skills, and ITP is simpler. And check about the price too. This is evaluated by a robot, just ABCD, and this uses open questions and essay and interviews. So it's more complex. Yes, ma'am.
How much time you would say a student needs to get ready in order to present this test?
It depends on their level. If I show you the chart here, this, for example, for an A1 student, A2, they will need up to a year and a half. Okay, but for an advanced student, they will need 2, 3, 4 months. Well, depending on the hours, right? In the classes they take. And I have met students who are like, they understand the logic of the exam. And they also have a background on English. Okay, so I would recommend students who have like an intermediate advanced level to start leading their studies into a more academic, if they want to pursue students in the future. But yeah, it depends on the original level. When students have asked me about teaching them a course on TOEFL, I say, okay, but what is your level and how much time we have? Because it's not the same to teach an advanced students than a beginner, right? So yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's like depending on the context. Okay. Any other final question? No? Okay, I think this is it. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Congratulations.
C'è una